Good evening, everyone. Buenas, buenas. Thank you, mi reina. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm gonna wait for a couple people to join. So tonight's live, I have a special guest, and we're gonna be talking about a little bit of Espiritismo. We're gonna be talking about his new books. So I'm very, very excited. Make sure you guys share the like. Tap. Let's hit the 100Ks like I always do. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know I haven't been on here, but I promise I'm gonna go back to these type of interviews, these type of lives, because I know a lot of people love them. And one of the things that I love about these lives is not only are we all learning, because I myself, I am a student that I love to learn, but also we're giving, the platform for those who deserve it, right? Bendiciones, bendiciones. David, if you want to send me the invite, you absolutely can. So I'm not going to be answering any questions right now because we're going to start with the guests. And if I start looking on my other phone, it's not that I'm ignoring you guys. I have the questions on here. You guys know I'm super organized when it comes to all these lives, okay? So vamos allá. Bendiciones, bendiciones, bendiciones.
Hello.
Let me see if I can update. Yes.
Look at you, got your good attire on. I'm here in a t-shirt.
Listen, every time I do my
You gotta
lives,
look
I
the
try to
part.
like, okay, if I don't get dressed when I go out, I might as well do it when I'm on my live. So let me put this up. Let me put this up so I could hear you. I'm gonna wait for a couple more people. Everybody share the share the live. Let's tap. Let's show some support. We have someone who is on the platform right now who I've been following for a while. I've been listening and doing my what is it that they call me, the FBI agent. Because I'm I'm a little different from a lot of people on this platform. I don't like to just jump on anybody's wagon, but I feel that what David is doing right now, I mentioned it to him privately a couple weeks ago when I did my Espiritismo class. 90% of my Espiritismo class, whether they're Latinos, Blacks, they only speak English, like literally. There's no, and I laugh when I see a lot of these silly posts because I tell people like a lot of my godchildren, even though they might be Cuban or Puerto Rican or Mexican, they don't speak Spanish, So I think what he's doing is an amazing thing because I think that's one of the biggest issues that we have when it comes to Espiritismo is that, well, I don't know Spanish and I feel left out. So I don't want to talk too much because I want to give him all the light. But I think what he's doing is an amazing thing. So anybody who joined my class last month and is on this live now, this is for y'all because y'all kept asking me, well, can you give me some books? And I'm like, I don't read books like that. So I don't, I have the same book they gave me 20 years ago, and that's the one I use. So, pero nada. So anybody putting comments underneath, I'm not going to look at them. So please wait for any questions or anything like that for later on. I do have some questions on here. So if you guys see me looking down, it's not that I'm ignoring you, is that I did some questions so we could keep it a little organized. I usually like to do these lives at least an hour and a half. Sometimes I push it to 2 because if the conversation is good, I'm not going to cut nobody off, right? So bendiciones to everyone. David, I want you to introduce yourself. It's your time tell us a little bit about us, about yourself, who you are, what do you do, without getting into too much personal business because we have a lot of muertos oscuros on here and we don't need them. But
I invite them. I'll give them some light.
just a little bit, just tell us a little bit so people are not like, okay, this is just some random dude just writing books, okay? So I'm gonna go on mute.
Okay. My name is David Sosa. Some of you may know me more in the New York, New Jersey area. I am an Espiritita. I am also a Santero. I have been initiated in Lukumi to Oshun, Ibuanya. My godfather, Oniokoto, he was Ibaye. He was a really, really awesome person. And, I have been practicing. I'm a practicing Santero. I am a practicing Espirita. I probably do more masses and more tables than I do more Santo work and more Orisha work. But I try to keep a balance between the two because, like you said, a constant student, constant learning. Um, as those you may also know me, most of my page is not, believe it or not, religious stuff. It's mostly geared towards music. I am a musician as well and a singer and songwriter. But I definitely made a point to get into teaching a little bit more and having conversations similar to what you were saying about cross-cultural aspects and how we can bridge some gaps. And spiritism and or epiritismo really is for everybody, and it's something that, although it's culturally expressed primarily through the Caribbean Latino people, it's not solely just that. It really, there's many forms of it that exist. And so I wanted to make sure we were writing about that, teaching from that example, break down some of these walls and ideas that maybe cause division because they're not spoken about.
David, you mentioned something that hit home, and I've said this so many times because a lot of people are joining thinking or having this idea that we initiate into, lukumi, and we also practice any other practice, whether it's palo, whether it's aperitismo, and we are like forced to like do everything. And I've always told people there's santeras that have never worked an ocha room and all they do their entire life is espiritismo. They crowned for whatever reason, for health, because the Orisha said it, they had to. And you mentioned that because that's something that I think that we are having a huge issue with this generation because everybody they're not getting their feet wet yet in one practice and they already think that, oh, I have to. So that you mentioned, like I am initiated in Lukumi, but this is where I my feet are like more into. And I love that you mentioned that because that's something that I want people to understand, that just because we are practitioners of multiple practices doesn't mean that, oh, we automatically have to do everything 24/7 or anything like that. So I love that you mentioned that.
Not at all. I think it's important to stress the idea of not being a jack of all trades and master of none. I think everything in its own time, right? Everything. This year alone probably was super Misa heavy, and then started becoming more Santo heavy. So it really just depends on where you're being called to learn. Spiritually, you're going to be called to the areas you need to be at, where you need to be, people you need to encounter for good and for bad, and understanding that whole process of each experience being a learning experience and being open to that. You know what I mean? And I think that's a big thing because we in the diaspora are very mixed in whether it be blood wise or other, it becomes oh no, well, I have these ancestors in Haitian voodoo, and now I have to do this in Palo, and now and it's like, hold on.
Yep.
The questions that really should be asked, in my opinion, by anybody bringing anyone to any sort of divination is to what degree does this person need to be involved?
Ache.
It helps us differentiate between a devotee and a practitioner. An initiate does not make you an automatic priest. Practice and study makes you a priest. It gives
Ache.
you access to learn more, to get hands on in order to operate in that capacity. But like you said, some people did Santo or did Ocha for their health. They have no desire to crown anybody else, to have a bunch of God kids or to be this grand thing. They did it for them. It's very personal. And, I like to highlight that because I feel like that's missing. I think there is a misconception.
Yes.
Have to, oh no, well, if I get this, then I have to do that. You don't have to do anything.
Ache.
To stay Puerto Rican and die. That's the only thing I got to do. Two things
Ache.
I got to do in this life.
Ache. No, and it's big because I'm seeing it a lot. Um, and I've said this last life that I was on, I mentioned it like, yes, there's people that literally finish their yauraje and the Orisha's like, now it's showtime. And they got 6, 7 heads they got to crown. But there's people that will go 10, 15, 20 years and never crown anybody. And it's not their, and it doesn't make, I want people to understand it doesn't make you a less priest because that's a big thing here. And when I first jumped on TikTok and I would have conversations, I would have a lot of people tell me, well, how many godchildren do you have? Well, how many initiates? The topics that I mentioned have nothing to do whether I have 20 godchildren or have 0 godchildren. It has absolutely, and I think that's a big issue that especially this generation is facing because old Alawalas didn't care about that. If you were sharing knowledge, they didn't care if you have 0 godchildren or 100 godchildren. Like that doesn't, that doesn't define you as a better person or a less person or anything like that. So I definitely agree. David, where are you located, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm in New York. I'm actually in Brooklyn. I just moved
Oh.
to the area.
Oh, well, to everybody who's been harassing me and asking me if I know an espiritista or anything like that, you guys could reach out to him. I'm gonna be in Jersey in November. So I would love definitely to like link up because I have godchildren there in New York and I want to go to New York. But I'm going to Jersey. One of my yawosas, she's doing her bometa. So I'm gonna fly out there with the hubby and do all that. So that's definitely nice to know that you're there in New York because there's a lot of like people saying New York this, and I feel that New York still has good priests and good espiritistas. It's just I think the good ones we're hiding. I think that's what it is.
We work in small circles. I have a tight knit group of people that I work with consistently between Ocha and Espiritismo, in La Mesa Blanca, and it just really is. You learn to work with one another. You spiritually align. Your spirits are comfortable with one another. There's not this going on. Some of these are my elders. Some of these are, I have one friend, he's Crown Chango 22 years. I have another friend, Yemaya, 23 years. I have me at 15 years of Tulachun. And so we don't over talk one another. We don't think that we have all the answers. There's many times me and my friends will have conversations and I'll be like, I disagree. And they're like, well, why? Well, this is why. And we're looking at things now in different point of views and things to consider. So we're constantly learning from each other and it forms a beautiful respect for each other's life experiences, each other's spiritual experiences, and still allows room to grow and evolve.
And I think that's the big thing that I want people to understand that we could disagree to a lot of things, and as long as we're respectful, because you see it all the time. You see a lot of the old heads, they stay arguing and yelling at each other, and at the end of the day, they hugging and shaking hands and they're brothers and sisters like nothing happened. So I definitely agree. In my house, just because that's how I saw it in my madrina's house, in my house, I'm the same way. There's no, the babalao is better than this person or the santero of 20 years is better than the one that has 1 year. I'm blessed. And all the santeros that my padrino brings, because he's the yubona that I always lift to do my crownings. That's one thing that I love. And the fact that, my godfather who has 20 plus years in this, respects me, because I always say I'm a baby. I have 9 years in Ocha, but the way he respects me, the way that, I love seeing that. And I think that there is still priests out there, but this ab makes it seem like we're all at war with one another, right? We're all like, but in reality, when you go out to the community, a lot of us stick together, even if we don't know each other. Like we could disagree and agree, but we still have that respect. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, there's a lot of people with ego and stuff like that, but for the most part, I think that I love what I do here in my house. That you mentioned, that the years are respected and everybody. It's not just ella only speaks on that. On it doesn't matter if you have 20 years, if you have 1 year. Respect is respect to everyone flat out. So I love that you mentioned that.
It's very much the Eye un Leo Bara, and that whole reverse of understanding the profound respect the youth have to have for the elders, and the elders have to have for the youth. And a lot of time that gets misconstrued, right? They're like, oh, the ears can't pass the head. The only one that passes is a donkey, right? But it's also like, but if you cut down your ears and you can't hear, you stop learning, right? So there's a lot of understanding to how we are integral to one another. And we forget that these traditions are communal. These are not a one person deal. No one's running a single misa by themselves. There's usually somebody or some people helping, right? And so even outside of Espiritismo, any initiation, we're calling in people. We're calling in people to take parts of their day, hours of their day, to get dirty, to be present, to give their energy, their time, their talents in order to get someone initiated. And those are the things that I think people get so lost on the capitalism of society. Like, oh, this costs so much money and blah, 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 blah. Yes, it does. Guess what costs money? Getting a doctorate,
Yeah.
getting a bachelor's. And you might be in debt afterwards too, right? But you
Yeah.
earn back what you learned to put forward what you put into action. And so it's an investment in yourself. It's an investment in your community, and it's a real big lesson on allowance when you get into
Yeah.
community. It's because you have to allow yourself to trust, to be a little bit vulnerable in order to bond with these godparents and with these fellow practitioners now where you're forming an ile or even outside of your ile, right?
Achi, Achi. I know there's a lot of questions on in the bottom about the books. We're gonna go into that. I was just he mentioned a topic that I really liked, and that's why we got off a little off track. And y'all know that I like to do my interviews, and it's depending on the vibe. So he said something that was on point, and I wanted him to speak on it because I feel that I like people coming into this platform because I have a lot of people who always say that Senya is this close-minded person, and it's always. But then when I have conversations with other priests, with other espiritistas, and I'm like, okay, I'm not as close-minded because a lot of us have very similar opinions. So I like people to hear that, and that's what he was mentioning. But we are going to talk about the books he has out there. So let me get to the questions. First question that I have for you, David: what form of espiritismo do you practice?
Definitely Criollo and Cruzado. That was where my first teacher, when I ever even heard about Espiritismo, was this older Puerto Rican woman by the name of Carmen Catala, who lives in Florida now. I don't know where she lives. I think it's by Tampa or something. But she at that time had 32 years of Yemaya. So she's an elder, and one of the people we were talking about, she made Ocha really for her health. For her family, her sister, the same thing. These were women who were terminally ill and were given short times to live. And Mafre Fun La Ocha, they lived way beyond, and she's still living. And so I learned from her. I had a weird experience as a kid, kind of seeing spirits all the time and experiencing things I couldn't quite understand. And I was raised Jehovah's Witness of all things. So my
Wow.
parents were like, my mom and dad were like, ignore it, pray it away, say the name of Jesus, and it did not work. That's not how it works. And so I didn't know what I was experiencing. I just knew that I was being interacted with consistently. I suffered from insomnia and all sorts of other things because it was constant. And so when I met her and she framed to me the idea that I had spiritual guides and protectors and that there are things I can work with to assist me in, getting rid of things and whatever, I was ready. I was signed in. I was like, what do I got to do? And so, she sat me down and had me sit in front of the table, glass of water, candle, very old, and say prayers and start learning what it was to focus and start learning what it was to quiet the mind and listen, and be willing to be wrong and share. That's another thing that we forget in order to speak up, so that it's present in those spaces as well as when the misa starts later on, down the road. So I was very happy for that. I'm very happy for the teaching she started me on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. And I know you mentioned, so you've been pretty much practicing Espiritismo pretty much your whole life. So obviously not when you were a child because your parents practiced something else, but
19.
pretty much, wow. So that's, and I'm mentioning this because I want to go to the questions on the books because I don't want people to just say, oh, this is just somebody writing books. Because we have a lot of those. We have people who are not practitioners, which there's nothing wrong with it, because there's people that study religion and they study certain things and then they write on these topics. But he is a practitioner of Espiritismo. And I want to mention what he said because there is a lot of forms of calling Espiritismo Cruzado that he mentioned, I think is one of the oldest terms that they say is I don't know what happened with David that he left. Maybe he had a call. Okay. That he mentioned when he says Espiritismo Criollo, that is another form and another term of calling Espiritismo Cruzado. Okay, so I do want people to understand that as well. Okay.
Sorry, I don't know what happened.
Okay. Now, let's go down to what everybody wants to hear. Tell us about these books that you have created. I know there's multiple different types of books, and he is going to share at the end or in between where you guys could purchase this. I just want him to focus on what these books, what they really are. Okay. I'm gonna go on mute.
All right, so we have, honestly, in line of what we opened the conversation with, we had the Misa prayers. We thought it would be great to have them in English and in Spanish. And these are not just the prayers for the exact Misa, but maybe some of the commissions as well and things of that nature. And so we put them side by side. So now this also becomes a tool for people who maybe want to learn Spanish and or from Spanish into English. So while they're reading the prayers in a misa, can now be like, our Father who art in heaven, and or, and really just say it all together. And so we wanted to make sure we put everything in one spot when it came to that. We have another book called The Bóveda that we wrote. We've been writing for years and we were like, we kind of just sat on it, but we were like, now's the time. I think in this age of misinformation, especially on this app and others, you start seeing people just saying anything. And because they look the part, they have 17 beads and head wraps and whatever else, people just listen. Or they look like them, and that's all they need. They need to know that someone who looks like them is teaching, and that's what they want. And so we wanted to just make sure we were doing our part. Like, we collected all this information, and for what? To just teach it to some of our God kids every now and then. And I'm like, no, there's some stuff here that would benefit everyone. And he agreed, and we started doing that. So the Bóveda talks about like the history of the Bóveda, the terminology of it all, right? Between Spain, between how that happens when it meets the Caribbean now, and now you have Afro and indigenous people together now lending to this practice and kind of forming it into different things, right? Versus the more scientific Cartesian way
Yes.
of Mixa, right? There's that notion of dry spaces where there's not a glass of water, where people sat around and they tapped into spirit without that, versus where a glass of water would make sense, and or where that comes from hand passes and magnetism and things of that nature. So we start talking a lot about this practice of Espiritismo, how the Bóveda is set up to help communicate, to commune and learn, and get in touch, versus being a space where maybe you're working a lot of obras. There's a space for different things. And so kind of really giving an idea to readers what it looks like. Some people may have one glass, some people may have 7, some people may have 9. And really just understanding where those come from culturally, what are the reasonings, glass dedications. Instead of just putting a bunch of glasses, I was taught this way, we dedicate those glasses to spirits we know we have in our cuadro espiritual. So I may start with 1 or 3 glasses. One may be to my ancestors, one may be to my main guide, and that fuente is my connection to the divine source, El Santísimo, right? And understanding that connection. And maybe glasses may get added on in time, and or may stay at one and get everything may come down and be centered and focused. So we allow room to understand the practice, the setup, the maintenance, how maybe 15 minutes a day, sitting, quieting the mind, saying some prayers. Obviously, there's prayers that have been written already and have been recited, and so we utilize those. But also understanding prayer can be a conversation and you speaking to your people and focusing. I remember my teacher, I forgot, like, let's pay attention,
No,
so
you're definitely speaking old school terms right now, and you just brought. I'm not trying to get emotional, but you brought back so many memories from like when I was learning, because that you mentioned is how old alawalas teach. It's you don't need, and everybody's different. And this is something that I teach people all the time. You don't need to have 20 cups to connect. Trust me, there's a lot of Cubans who still have that one cup, and that one cup is sitting right on top of the refrigerator, and it works wonder. So that you mentioned, that you're mentioning now, it really hits on how my brother taught me, and how I saw it and how he practiced. So it definitely, I agree. So the prayer one is just prayers, correct?
the misa prayers are just prayers in English and Spanish. So they'll have like the most blessed, the Ruda, all the stuff. The La Virgen Milagrosa, Santa Marta, Saint Lucy with the eyes. So it really
I
just
like that.
gives all the different maybe energies and entities we would work with or encounter in a misa or in a peritimo in both English and Spanish, and try to just give people that option to kind of learn from both
I
worlds
like that.
are not bilingual, if they're not bilingual or not.
I like that. I like that. And the one you have, the one that you mentioned on the wall with that. Do you have in the book? Do you explain maybe how to set it up? Because that's a question that a lot of people like. A lot of people ask me. I know there's a PDF that I shared in my last class that I found online. I took time to read it. It's like 100 pages. I took time to read it. The PDF is on point. Is I think she's Crown Chango, and this is a lady that she's Puerto Rican. She's still in PR, and she created this PDF. It's on point, and it shows people how to set up the bowl if they want to do it on their own, if they don't have guidance or whatever. But I know a lot of people, but that PDF is in Spanish. So a lot of them have asked me, well, is there any in English? And I know my classes, I kind of brief and try to speak and teach them a little bit. But do you have it in that book, in the Woda, how to at least set it up if they want to do it on their own?
We do. There, we did a very basic setup
Good.
about basic cleansing a space, what needs to be there. Also, not cluttering, because people tend to think more, and I can guarantee you in spirituality, less is more. I can
Yes.
guarantee you that. I don't care what anybody tells you across the board. Less is more, which is why we always went back to those tenets: a glass of water and a candle, to just start. And that even transcended and or dare I say went into Ocha in the same essence. Not that it came from Epiritimo, but sometimes the simplest form is Atana Meji and Omitutu, and we'll ask the Ocha if that's okay. Two
Yeah.
candles and a glass of water, or a jicara of water, or whatever, because it's really basic at its core at what the elements represent and what they provide, right? Refreshment, life. You think about the womb, we're conceived in water, right? It has a very symbolic understanding. Even the coconut, which forms its own thing with water inside of it, and how it nurtures us on many levels, from fats to even this blood transfer. You know what I mean? Because of the content of it. So we look at those things, and so we gave a very basic. We're leaving room because what we're understanding is that these are still oral traditions, and your elders and who you may encounter are going to give you something similar, right? Some people they do a lifting of a boda first. They may start on the floor and lift it a few days every
I've
whatever,
seen a lot of people do
right?
that.
They do that. You've seen certain people will baptize a doll. They'll actually go and do this whole thing before they do anything else with it. So there's these different understandings. We didn't get into that in this book. We wanted to keep it basic. What is a boda? What is a sacred space for you to sit, for you to connect, and for you to commune with spirit?
I like that.
Very simple, because we didn't want to take away from the fact that there's so many ways you may encounter an elder, but at the end of the day, you're going to have a clean space and a sacred space you're committing to sitting at comfortably and doing what it is you need to do to connect. And so we just kept it basic on that setup. But it's enough to give people, if you've never heard of Bovada before, it's a place to start. It's a place to get something in your home where you can set up a space.
I like that. And I do the same thing when it comes to my classes. I'm very like, even the words that I use, I want like kindergarten level. And it's not because I might feel that I'm dumb or somebody else is dumb. I feel that the reason I do that is because there's so much like terms and y tanta vuelta. They do a lot of like going around in circles on this app, on the internet itself, that I want to keep it, like you mentioned, basic. So people are like, oh, wow. And I have people that at the end of my class is like, Senia, if I would have met you 3-4 years ago, I wouldn't be stressing. And I tell people, Espiritismo should not be stressing you out. It should be doing the whole opposite. It should be relaxing you. It should be, healing you from certain things, from traumas, from whatever we went through. It shouldn't be stressing you out. If it's stressing you out, we're doing something completely wrong here. So I love that you kept it very basic. Mention a little bit and talk a little bit about the other books that you have as well.
We have so Kiev is pretty much he came into the tradition also around his late teens, early 20s, and he was initially before that practicing more of the neo-pagan. So he was doing more European work with some of the gods like Freya and Aphrodite and some of these other stuff. As he got more in touch with his roots, some of his other roots, he started working with 21 divisions, and it led into his term into spiritualism. Espiritism came more from that. So we had started writing books about Candelo and some of the stuff you might find in 21 divisions, Arzuli Freira, Metreseli, Beri Belkan, Papa Legba. So we like started writing that. Those are really more his specialty. That was very much more, he had way more input than I did in those books. But really we did that, and we have a book called The Magic of Pumpkins, because we realized that through our studies there was a lot of cultures that utilize gourds, pumpkins, and squashes for various things, sometimes for not just riches or fertility, but ways of cleaning and breaking. And so he did a really great breakdown, and we started talking about ways to have people, especially during Halloween, where you're going to get pumpkins and gourds are in season at this point in time, to utilize them for basic little obras and stuff that you can do across the board as somebody who's spiritually inclined to do so. Again, none of these books, nor should any books ever replace guidance from any elders or anybody who's in your corner that is spiritually attuned and has been in practice. There's always going to be something to learn, but it's a great guide to understand better how to work with very basic things we have around us. Sometimes we don't need to order a bunch of herbs. We have them growing outside as weeds. We just don't know that the medicine we need is right outside.
Yep.
I go outside and grab a pasote, I'll grab artemisia, I'll grab, sometimes people have hierba buena growing, I'll grab some and make a little quick bath. And so there's so many little things. Verdelaga grows crazy over here in the cracks of the cement.
I tell people all the time, New York has a lot of things that grow out. Look, unfortunately, people don't know it, and people don't know, oh, shoot, this is, and like you mentioned, 90% of our spiritual plants are weeds, and people will cut them off thinking they're not like plants, but in reality, they're there. And they so New York, y'all gotta walk them New York streets, because when we went to my husband's plante a couple months ago, and I saw it. I shared a video in the Bronx where we were picking up the animals. There was 3 plants growing right there in the concrete, right there. I was like, wow, this is crazy.
It
So
is.
for people saying that there isn't, there is plants up there. We just got to look for it.
It's not. I think a lot of us tend to overcomplicate spirituality. And we tend again to we get into this mindset, and it's very much how we're conditioned through our society that the more it looks whatever, and the more stuff we have, the more powerful it is, and the more meaningful it is. And it's just not the case. And so the reality of these books are really to start at a basic understanding in order to also guard against culture vulturing and things of that nature. It's really we stress history in here, historical value. This is where these spirits come from. This is where these oral traditions come from. This is where the folkloric culture comes from these people, and why this language is used. And so you're not coming into something just because I felt called and I have an affinity to it. You actually at least can know where it comes from and have a better understanding. I think one of the biggest things I've seen within our traditions, which is a trap sometimes with oral traditions, is that we become parrots and robots. We repeat everything we've ever heard, and we know how to do something almost to the T, but we never ever really get too much explanation as to why we're doing it. And so the idea is to demystify some of these things, while still respecting the idea of sacredness, right? Of understanding there's a reason for initiation, there's a reason, there's ways to access things when you're not initiated. There are reasons why, a shrine is different than an altar, why things are ritually consecrated versus not. And so we're trying to break down some of these things we've been encountering throughout the years, and especially on apps like this, so that people have a better understanding of what they're working with, why, and then the how.
I like that. I like that. Let me ask you the question. What inspire you to create these books? Because I mean, I don't practice 21 division, and you try to, and the way you spoke, I want to read them books. So what, the everything that you're saying fits to what a lot of us on this live right now are facing and want to learn for and want to learn of. What was your inspiration, you and your partner, who also wrote this? What, when you guys sat and were like, okay, we're gonna team up, we're gonna be business partners, this is what we're gonna do. What inspired you both to create these books?
We encountered, much like this app, very confused people who had ideas that were fanaticism or sensationalism, and they weren't rooted in anything we knew in any of our encounters. And we realized, I think, a lot of times that our secrecy, which really helped protect a lot of things, also set us up. And it allowed people, because people didn't know what we're practicing, and didn't everything was so wrapped in mystery. It birthed areas for charlatans to come out and say anything and make up anything, and people who were like, well, I don't know any better, I guess I'll do this. And so we were trying to figure out what is the best way to inform people, again, without giving too much, because we're never trying to give too much. There's a reason for spaces where you learn hands-on. You can, and now
Yes.
you can read about medicine. It doesn't make you a doctor, right? You're gonna have to go to school. You're gonna have to get reviewed by peers, have clinicals, and actually see patients and get vetted by these people who practice the same thing medicine that you do. And that's what all this is, right? Spirituality is medicine. That's why I always use that analogy. And then that's when you get your doctorate. After you've done it, you've read, you've now practiced, you've been vetted, and now you've been licensed to practice on your own or within the general community of physicians, right? And so, as metaphysicians, as people who are working the metaphysical, it became the same thing. How do we inform people on layman terms, get them maybe informed enough to maybe not be bamboozled or not be totally dependent on someone? Many people's things is people took money from me. I ran into this and this, and they did fake ceremonies. Okay, well, let's go back to basics. You have muertos, you have ancestors, and you don't need initiation for that. So now let's figure out how to better connect to this, and then we can start figuring out where you're supposed to go after the
Aching.
fact.
Aching. And I think that is the biggest problem that these practices are facing right now, David, that they want to remove that you just mentioned. And everything is, let's go straight to Ifa, let's go straight to Ocha, let's go straight to Palo, because now Palo is trending and everybody, does the DNA test and they figure out that they have 1% Congo and they automatically think they could initiate in Palo. So that's the new hype. But that you mentioned, that connection, and that's something that it's old school, and I don't know why they want to keep changing it. I never initiated in anything, I never did anything without getting to know who my ancestors were, my misas. Like my brother and his elders were very, very big on that. Like, no, you got no business in Ocha. Let's focus on this, unless, God forbid, because there's people that go straight to Ocha for illnesses, for whatever reasons. But if you don't have that, why are we rushing this? Why are we skipping? What do you think what's your opinion on that? Why do you think people are skipping the misas? They're skipping that connecting to what's something that's free, right? Something that it doesn't need initiation. What do you think that why are people skipping that?
Um, I think the more it goes back to that more thing, right? More people you have these sacred vessels in your house, therefore it must be more than my glass of water and a candle. That seems too simple. It seems too simple. And if you're biblical, folks, mustard seed. It's very simple, right? It's always been simple. And we make it bigger. I think someone asked a question about muerto versus egun and or ancestors. You can have spiritual guides that are not related to you, and you may have some that are related to you that are your spiritual guides. So that's why I use the terms interchangeably and differently. Just real quick before I lose that in the mix. But yes, people want to jump. It's the society we live in. They treat the symptoms, not the disease, right? They treat, oh, you have a headache. All right, so we'll give you this medicine for the headache, but now you got a runny nose, you got kidney failure, you got right, and becomes that. They're not thinking about let's get to the root of it. At the root cause of everybody, at the root center of everybody, we have a connection to the divine. And it doesn't matter where you're coming from, the cosmology, whether it be Yoruba, whether it be Congo, whether it be Christian. We all came from some supreme being that aligned with us in some way, shape, or form. They created us in an image that was similar or in their mind frame. So we have an access to this divine thing. This is just a way. It's a way. It's not the way. Like I said, plenty of people throughout the world, before there was a term spiritism or spiritualism, were practicing something, especially indigenous places in Africa, in China even. They had their own way to connect to spirit and or to their ancestors, and those things just carried over. So whether you call it spiritism or not, you still have a way to access where you come from and those essences that walk with you on this earth for whatever reason in this incarnation.
Yep. I agree. I agree 100. Everything that you just said, I agree 100%. And I think somebody in the bottom, I think it was Millie, that they said fanatismo, and that's a big one in this generation, is that fanatical mentality that, like David was saying, the bigger the better, the more cups, the more connected I am, the more beads, the bigger priest I am, the more I sit on here and talk more, the more I know better than another person. It's an ego thing, but it's also that fanatic mentality as well. So I do agree on that. I also want to, I know he mentioned spirit guides when it comes to, and this is something that I saw a couple weeks ago in somebody's page. When it comes to Lukumi, when it comes to Espiritismo, there's a lot of terms that we use that we enter, what is the word? What's that?
They intersect sometimes.
Right? When it comes to Egun, we call Muerto, we call spirit guide. Like, sometimes we are referring to the same exact thing, but we're using, because I saw a post one time and a girl was like, well, you can't call them Egun, but we do, so I think it's a fact of getting to know the culture and understanding it. The whole thing with, like the baba and the iya, like people use it, but in Lukumi, to me, baba is the Orishas, right? I call Obatala baba Obatala. But, in Africa, baba is a father, or it's, so they call the babalao baba. They all call, and it's perfectly fine. But I want people to understand that some of the terms we use them like that. So when he mentioned spirit guides, like he said, it could be, your ancestors, it could be, not blood related. So that's important to and yes, and what Millie said, it's a culture thing. And I think that instead of jumping and saying, well, the person is wrong, I think we should learn where this came from. And I think last year when I had a back and forth with the person who told me, well, you can't call them an espiritista, but they've been calling mediums espiritista for decades. Like that, I didn't create that. We know what an espiritista is and what a medium is, but you'll hear a lot of people calling a medium an espiritista, and it's just a matter of understanding the terms and how we use them. That's just, I just wanted to share that there.
And it's I mean, for me, for someone who is, I say I'm relatively a non-Spanish speaker because I do not speak Spanish fluently. Um, I had to learn in these environments that I notice when I'm around Spanish speaking people a lot more, it starts to make just more sense through years and years of proximity and being around, and you just kind of start to learn. And I think spirit has a big part to do with that as well. Like when you get, I've gotten evidencias in Spanish, and I'm like, I actually know what they're saying, and I don't know why I know what they're saying, but I know what they're saying. And then there's those moments where I'll be like, I got 80% of that. I need someone to get that last part right here, right? But I get called to do a lot of misas in English for people who are, either African American or people who are just Spanish speaking people. And so I've incorporated ways of, a lot of my spirit guides are very interesting. I have a lot of very church oriented spiritual guides, but they're very the down south type of church. So I sing a lot of gospels during my misas. I sing those songs, right? And it's very different for people culturally to come from. They're like, oh, I don't know what song this is, and I'm like, yeah, that's how people feel when we're all singing San Santissimo, right? I'm like, but we can hold space for both. So let's sing. Let's start with this, and then we can go into this, right? So I say that to say, Spiritism there's no color here, there's no hierarchy here. Right? So when I open up a misa, the first thing I tell everybody is, I want everyone to know that your elders here are not your elders in this moment. In this moment, we are all one mind and one accord. And the goal here in that one mind is to communicate and to make sure we leave here understanding that there's life after death, that death is not a finality, and that we have faith, hope, and compassion, or caridad, charity, for each other, that we understand the human experience through the spiritual experience, and we walk out of here a little bit differently, a little bit less, maybe lighter than we walked in, right? And I try to get everyone on that mode because it's not about language, it's not about culture and the essence of why you're here. All of our spirits are from different lands half the time. So we have to hold this space that is maybe a little bit more open and conscious of that. And I know that you're doing that, and you have to probably encounter that more as you come across more people like me who, we're Puerto Rican and or maybe Latino, but we don't speak Spanish.
Yeah, I have 90% of my misas, it's like you mentioned, and it's either Black Americans or Hispanics that don't Latin. That's why I always, and I tell people this all the time when they're lifting espiritistas. You need to lift somebody who translates or who has somebody who translates. Because I did a funny video a couple weeks ago, and it was funny to many, but I was so dead ass. When I speak English, but when it comes to misas, my English goes out the window. And it's funny because sometimes I speak in a way that even my Black American godchildren that don't know a lick in Spanish, they understanding every word that Muerto is saying. I don't know how it is,
it's spirit.
But they get it, but they understand it. But I tell people, like, misas, you have to, because it's an important moment, and you cannot just show up and be like, oh, well, if you don't get it, you don't get it. No, you're paying you're lifting me. And I always, if I can't have one of my godchildren that are reading and they only speak English, and for whatever reason they can't translate, I make sure my husband is there if they have to translate. But I want them to understand the message, because I'm seeing that a lot. And we don't see it a lot when it comes to the Spanish speakers, because obviously if they're speaking Spanish, they're understanding what you're saying. But if it's a language barrier, it's important to have someone there to translate. It's important. And so to me, that's like, I get, when I hear people saying, well, they didn't translate, I didn't understand. You don't have no idea, David, like that irks. I don't know if it's the folks that walk with me and they get in their feelings, but I get so upset because, like you said, Espiritismo has no elders, and Millie literally said that word. Espiritismo, there is no such thing as, well, I've been practicing 30 years, I get a high, right? No. In Espiritismo, all that is out the window. You know, that's one of the beauties of that practice, right? That there is no, you can't act cocky because a 6-year-old can have a message. You know, it is what it is. But I love that you mentioned that. And I love that you're mentioning the mixing of the songs, because I feel that, and I've noticed this with a few people, and this is why I'm so big, especially with Black Americans, on not changing how you started. Because there's a lot of Black Americans who might join, you know, or meet a Latino godfather or Latino godmother, and they're like, well, remove your altar. You can't just tell them to remove something they've been doing for years already. You have to teach them to incorporate this in what they're going to start practicing new. And also, as a godparent, that's how I see it. I have godchildren who practice hoodoo. I don't know a lick of hoodoo, but guess what? Now I got to learn a little bit of hoodoo, at least get my feet wet a little bit on the 1-2 steps. Why? Because I have godchildren that practice this. And just like I want them to honor and respect my religions and the religions that they're choosing to join and make them part of their practices, I think it's respectful, me as a godparent, to say, you know what, teach me a little bit about this. I want to know the basic about this, because that just shows them that, coño, it's somebody that really respects what I've been practicing. But you just can't tell somebody, well, take this off. Like I shared it a couple weeks ago. I had a lady that I did a reading, and somebody told her, well, you can't have an ancestor altar and you can't have a war with that, because both spirits start arguing. And that, like, I try to like explain it to this person in the best and the person was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing it. And I was like, okay, whatever you say. But that hurts me, because at the end of the day, spirits are spirits. There is no that whole, well, I can't have an ancestor altar because it's going to bother my bowl. I don't know where people are getting this.
It comes from, I hate to say it, it comes from the ignorant lens of people who try to make spirits align with their way they see things. Okay? Let's put it this way. If you have spirits in conflict, which can happen, spirits can sometimes become in conflict, let's be real.
Absolutely.
The reality is that's where education comes in. That's where light comes in. That's where lifting comes in. That's where you, depending on your glass system, how you may set certain things up on there. You've seen people with steps sometimes, ladders. You see them things, they'll elevate certain prayers, and they'll do certain dedicated prayers, right? To towards one spirit or the other, to understand, hey, we're not forgetting anybody, but I have one guia principal, and that's the gatekeeper of this. So I can't, that's the one who has to figure out what we have to do now before all these people are getting too close, right? I had this issue. These are my two ladies, my two active ladies, right? My muertas up here. I have my gitana, gitana as everyone sees her, and I have my negra, right? And when I was coming up in this, and I felt them both on both sides of me fighting for who wants to whatever, until I had to do very specific things with my godfather and my Gibon at the time to be like, hey, let's get these spirits in order. Because there's always, again, that's why education, I tell about you don't even stop learning in death. That's why there's an education that happens in death to the spirits. There's an education for spirits. So you will never not be a student. Never think you know
Yep.
it. Okay? But that being said, people get these ideas, or you can't have these spirits with that spirit either, because this and that. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you guys working in my unification for my journey in this earth and incarnation or not? Because that's what the prayers are telling me. That's what I've been praying for this whole time. So why are you not doing what's in accordance to this unless you're making something up? Because that's how you understand it to be. And if that's the case, then there is no uniformity. There is actually no union that's happening. That's why we call the meeting of us a reunion. We are reunioning from the union you already formed with your spiritual quadrant, with your cuadro espiritual.
Yep. I agree. I agree with everything that you're saying. And I think they were mentioning down there, I think it's an ego thing. And I think it's also like
Lack of
Eric is
education.
saying, it comes from a lack of knowledge. And I see it a lot on this app. And that's why when he was saying certain things, I got a little emotional because if you are a person that's been practicing Espiritismo for a long time, there's certain things that people say that oh, this person's been practicing for a while. Just because of the way they explain things and the terms that they use. And then you have those who I call the TikTok espiritistas, who really learned it a couple years ago, or are just literally copying and pasting. They'll go to David's page. Okay, he's talking a little bit. Okay, write that down. They'll go to somebody else's page. Okay, I like that. And then they talk real nice, because they talk real nice, and then people fall for that. But for those of us who grew up in this, who's been in it for a while, there's certain things people say that you're like, okay, that's why when he was saying certain terms, I got a little emotional, because it reminded me of certain things my brother would say. Let me ask you a question, David. Let me make sure that we went over all the questions, because I have a bunch of questions that some of my godchildren have wanted me to ask you, or just because you're another espiritista and they wanted to get your input on this. Where can they purchase these books? And do they come all in a pack? Can they purchase one? Do they have to purchase all of them? And how do they do that?
So we've been setting everything up almost like a series. We've been saying things like, if you do one book, the next book's going to make much more sense. You could read them out of order because the information is the information, but it's almost kind of a step by step. That being said, what we've been doing now, as we've been in the beginning phases, we've been putting packages together that are just cheaper to get everything together that way. And then what we've been kind of doing just as a thing is, when someone puts an order in, let's just say for 4 books, because these books are usually between $20 and $25, right? We're keeping them relatively not too high, not too low, just somewhere in the middle that's relatively affordable. But let's say you spent $100 and you bought all 4 books. We're probably going to throw in another 2 or 3 books in there, whether you're interested in them or not. Why? We're trying to give thanks to people for supporting us as a small business, and we're able to at the moment. We got everything in bulk, and we're able to do that. But these are going to be, I think the majority, I can tell you right now, what we have live on Amazon, if someone wanted to just go to Amazon and do that, you would look up under either, you could, let's say, pick a title, the Boveda or Misa Prayers, under David Sosa and Kev Martinez, and that's Kiev. You can order that straight from Amazon. But if you get it through us, we're going to probably throw more books in there for the price of 4. But right now, I think the Bóveda, Misa Prayers, the Misa Guide, the Cuadro Espiritual, and the Caldero Espiritual, which I don't have a copy of right now. I'm waiting for the author's copy. Which that one, I know a lot of people were like, what? And I'm like, yes, because we need to talk the difference between an infumbe and a spiritual vessel.
Yes.
And why one is prepared one way and the other one's not prepared that way. And also other cultures and other spirits that may require a vessel that would be considered a pot, but it's not anything to do with palo or anything to that. And so we're trying to demystify and educate at this point. But that's one of the books we have. We have the Cuadro Espiritual. What are some of the commissions that you might encounter and how that shifts and evolves, right? So one of the things I'll talk about sometimes in misas that I've seen, I know people gonna probably roll their eyes or whatever. Not all madamas are black. Full stop. A madama is a matronly spirit, full stop, who puts things in order, who is somebody who may be a caretaker, who maybe have been a midwife, may have been someone who kept the house, period, whether it was her own kids or somebody else's. She is not Aunt Jemima. She is not that spirit. Now, can she be that? Yes, but she's not solely that. So we're trying to break the misconceptions, right? There are several types of gitanas. Now we shouldn't say the word because in English it's considered a derogatory term to use the word gypsy. But there's several different type of nomadic people that have existed, and so they can be linked to gitanos and gitanas, right? Because they're
Yes.
nomadic. They travel, and they could be from the Middle East. They could be from India. They could be from Transylvania, the
Ooh,
Romani. They could be
talk.
right. And so we have to broaden our lens as Espiritistas because as we learn, we start unlocking a better, broader lens so we can identify spirits better. Because the reality is that not everybody has a Congo, not everybody has a Madama, not everybody has a Gitana. I cannot tell you the times I've walked into people's houses and they have an altar for a spirit I do not see with them at all and have not seen with them. And I'm like, you have a whole altar here. You have a whole doll for something that's not even actively working for you right now.
Yep.
And it's because
I've encountered that when I went to Chicago. I encountered that. I saw that, and sometimes with people get in their feelings. Thank God that that didn't happen to me. When I got lifted to Chicago, I was treated, and the people that lifted me were hands down an amazing experience. Treated me and my husband like we were coming to America. They were super sweet. But that happened. The One of the girls was had a whole altar to this spirit, and I'm like, coño, pero es que yo no veo nada. And mind you, the girl was present to the three misas prior to hers because they were all friends. They all got together. They all chipped in so they could fly me out there. So she was there. So prior to her misa, I saw her, and I'm like, yo no veo nada. And she's like, yeah, no, they told me in a reading. And I'm like, what? And then when it got to her day, I'm like, I'm sorry to tell you this, but that comes from, and this is a topic that I don't like to talk about on lives because people grab it and run with it. That mentality and a lot of these problems come from the so-called I had a dream and I'm connecting. And yes, there is a lot of people that find spirituality and find certain things through dreams. Absolutely. I would never discredit that. But we are living right now in a generation that everybody's dreaming. How is everybody dreaming? Not
yeah.
everybody's a dreamer. Everybody's dreaming. Everybody's looking at Orisha dreamings. How do you know exactly? And this is some question that I always ask people. How do you know exactly that you had a dream with this Orisha? Because in reality, none of us know what Orichas look like. We're basing what they look like on pataquines, on odums, and certain things like that, right? And that's why I'm very big on not talking too much about this topic. But I think that idea of building altars and putting stuff comes from that. Well, David, I had a dream that I saw this Congo. Well, how do you know it's a Congo? How do you know? And then when you explain it, they get in their feelings. They get upset because I've had people in readings that will never contact me again. No, no, you're wrong. I don't argue with people like that. Oh, okay. If you say I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But explain it to me. How do you know that this is what you had a dream of? And a lot of them, they could never answer you. A lot of them could never give you that answer.
It's the issue is, and I've had this conversation with several people, especially on this app, is discernment, and we forget about the idea of discernment and why a community is important, because the community will check. When you have 3 or 4 perititas that you've trusted and grown a bond with, and you've been working misas with them, and you understand them, and they say to you, "You're seeing what? Let's sit down with that. Let's investigate that a little bit more." Right? So again, terminology, limited exposure outside of your culture, limited exposure in education, let's be real, can lead to the ideas that come about, right? So when somebody automatically says, and this is where the isms come into play, and this is why there's so much little things that are coming up more now, as you see between a lot of different practitioners and the people getting into it. When you say somebody's a Congo, that means they had to have shown you they were of Congolese origin. If you are an Espiritita and you're saying with your chest, this is a Congo, that means you have that muerto showed you something that you know to be true from a Congolese origin. Now, let me I'm gonna like get right back to it real quick. So I had got read more than a few times. I have a muerto who asked for his own little pot, his own little. He definitely was a Congo. I waited about 3 or 4 times before someone told me about it. That I was like, I guess, and I sat down because I didn't see the spirit. If y'all see the spirit, but I'm not seeing it, I'm not making no moves because at the end of the day, if this is my spiritual guide, I need to see it. I need you to show up to me and not the 18, espirititas around here that are telling me this, that, and the other. Because you're my guide, not theirs. But I'm open to the fact that maybe I'm not. So I started doing specific prayers. I started sitting with this. I saw, again, that focus, that time and dedication. And my conversation was very specific. If you are my Congo and you really want something to put you in and something to represent you, I need you to be very specific on what it is I need to have and put together. And when I tell you that I had the dream, and I don't when I tell you that I wake up from my dreams not knowing what the hell happened, unless I need to remember it, unless it's a message there, I wake up like I know I did something, but I don't remember what it was, and I get to my coffee and about my day. I remembered, and I did something so much so that the next misa, a friend of mine who didn't know I did all that was like, "You did something finally for that man because he's showing me that you did." And I was like, "Boom!" Right? And he helped me. That being said, everyone started saying, "Oh, that means you need to do this for Paulo. You do this for Paulo." And I said, I have no affinity, no calling to Paulo at all. I said, I respect it. I respect the practitioners. I respect the practice. I just don't. I knew when I felt Ocha, I was like, I feel like this may be something I got to get into, but I'm going to let Dilo Goon handle that because I'm okay with just being a peritita, minding my business. Because I love to mind my business. And what happened? I come to find out later on in these years that my ancestry had a big Haitian influx in Mayagüez, that part of Puerto Rico, and the French influence there. And so when I got read and 7-8 fell, and I had to do stuff with Asohano and with the 7 African powers and all this stuff, and it wound up leading me to Haitian voodoo, where they have Congolese origins, their firmas and everything. And that is the direction I had to handle my muerto and my Congo and stuff. I wasn't Palo. But if you only know Palo, you're going to think that that's where it has to be. So I tell people, the more you learn about other cultures and about what's happening, the more you're able to see, and the muerto will guide you and keep you to where you have to go. Luckily, I didn't get scratched, so nobody's nothing and whatever, because that wasn't what I was being called for, just because I had something of Congolese origin. And so we have a responsibility as spiritists when we are identifying somebody's spirit to give that person, I don't want to say the bare minimum, but give them the bones. I see a spirit presenting like this. I see them with this. Now it's your job to hold the imagery in your mind that I just told you, and you go home with your glass of water and your candle, and you call to that spirit in mind, and you connect with that spirit in mind. That's your work and your job, not the Espirititas here. We're here to identify. This is an investigation. We're here to identify and investigate. It is your job to confirm. Because at the end of the day, if you're doing your work, evidencia should be a confirmation, not a revelation.
Loose. And I am a person, and that you mentioned, I've said it to people, and people will look at me sideways. I don't care what I see in a misa. I have never and will never, in a first time meeting somebody, straight up that nonsense that's going on. Oh, you got to get initiated in Palo. It's the first misa. I always tell people, oh yeah, write it down. I'm looking at this spirit that is like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. Do your research. I remember not too long ago, I did a misa on a young girl. I don't know anything about 21 divisions. I don't know. A mí no me llama la atención nothing about 21 divisions. You ask me right now, I think the only one I know is Papa Candelo because there's a whole song that it's a merengue that I love it and I'm always singing it. That's the only reason I know who he is. But I don't know nothing. And I remember telling the person, write it down. Porque me están diciendo this, and that. But we are having people or quote unquote espiritistas telling people at the first time, oye, you got to get initiated. No, eso hay que investigarlo. It has always existed. There has been people, I'm going to put my perfect example. I see here this and this and that. We got to do a misa dedicated to that spirit that we're seeing to see if this spirit is Congo or to see if this spirit es Vudú, si este espíritu es palo. They don't do that anymore.
No,
now everything's
that's the investigation. That's the actual investigation.
Yeah, now it's like there, and I've seen it. I've done misas on people that tell me, oh, I got to get initiated in palo. And I do them, oye, and I'm a person, I don't know if it's because of what walks with me, I see Congos that no one sees. And I've told the person, and they will get in their feelings when I tell them, I'm like, I don't see nothing you getting initiated anywhere. Yeah, you have a spirit that looks like this. You have another spirit that looks like, but there's no, they told me, of course and I tell people, just because you have a Congo spirit or a Francisca or a Jose or a Julian, it doesn't mean that you have to be initiated into Palo. And that is something that back in the day was always investigated. Wait, hold on. Senia needs to get initiated. And they would do misas just for that Congo. And if you were a person that mounted, they would see if that Congo will come down, will mount, and that Congo will say, oye, I'm Mayumbe, I'm Briyumba, I'm Haitian Voodoo. They don't do that anymore. They don't. And that's how and I tell people, you guys don't understand the danger that will cause to your spirituality. Like, it's very, very different, Ocha from Palo. It's very different.
Different cosmology, different ideology. If you look at the notion of Egun and Bakulu, they're not the same.
Yeah,
they're not the same. And if you say, oh, well, that's just it's deeper than ancestors because Bakulu has a whole different thing that goes this way and Egun has a whole different thing that goes this way, if you know what I'm saying. It's a whole different trajectory of where the medicine lies and what aligns with it, celestial versus terrestrial, right? So we have to stop blanketing statements. Again, that's where it becomes our job as Espiritistas to broaden our lens and our knowledge base, right? And I did a misa recently. Actually, I did a misa before for this gentleman who said he wanted to do a misa and have prayers in his house. I said, fine, whatever. I never asked him any questions. I tell, this is what I need you to have the day of. I'll send you a list. You should clean your house beforehand and have something to clean your house after when people leave. You should, prepare a little something for yourself, blah, blah, blah. And, you have to feed the people that come. You can get a pizza if you want to. It does not have to be a big, elaborate meal. You get a 20-piece nugget. I don't care. I try to get people to simple, right? So we're sitting there. It was a misa. I think it was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday. Because I tell people, if you think that I'm coming to your house on Sunday evening when I got to work at 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday, you're bugging. So you're getting a daytime misa. And this idea that people you can't do misas during the day, I don't know where that came from. But
I don't know where people are getting that part.
I don't know. I'm like, so spirits go to sleep in the daytime? I don't get it. You spirits that work with the sun? Because I do. But anyway, so I'm sitting there doing the Our Father. I'm sitting there doing the Hail Mary, right? Glory be, all this stuff. And I said, sir, I would love to continue doing these prayers. I said, but you have a spirit here that's an Arabe. And it's telling me that you have other prayers you need to be doing here that we can't say. I'm like, is there a prayer you say? His phone goes off, and it's the time for he's Islamic. And he didn't show up that way or nothing. The prayer starts singing on his phone at that moment. And I was like, do you know the prayers to say? So when we had those brief intervals when things got too quiet and we needed to come back, I said, please say a prayer in your Islamic faith so we can get the Misa. And we had conducted the Misa relatively in Islamic prayers. So we have to understand this dynamic of what prayer is, what energy is. When people are meeting and gathering together with one accord, it can happen. And as your spirits who've walked this earth and who have maybe reincarnated themselves in different incarnations will know a little bit sometimes of things and give you just enough for it to be investigated further and or to make sense. I've had Hindu deities come that I know nothing about, that had to be corroborated later and investigated, and when it did, it made sense later. But we have to stop acting like people stop dying after the 1700s. Not everyone's Victorian. Not everyone wears this, that, and the other. Not everyone's a. People keep dying. I'm waiting for the computer nerd from the 80s that died from a cocaine overdose to come in somebody's misa and they have him in you know what I'm saying? Like, everyone just was from a particular lens. So we have to really understand also that. And Africa's huge. There's countries upon countries. Why is everybody in Congo? Why is everybody Ocha related? There's nobody from South Africa. There's nobody from Zimbabwe. There's nobody from. And so I tell that even to my African American practitioners. I'm like, you guys are fixating on these African traditional religions that only belong to certain African groups. And I can guarantee you probably come from so many other spaces that
Yep.
you may be called to. You may actually have to go back to the motherland and learn something from over there that you don't have to even get in. Like, it's just, everything's not Ocha and everything's not Palo. It's just not.
My husband says that. I tell that to, listen, I did a misa one time. I thought I was bugging. I saw it. The lady had a whole doctor in her court. And at first I was like, I'm not going to say this because I have to be tripping. So I kept it like to myself and I kept doing the misa. I kept giving. It was a very, very personal. When I say personal, it was a lot of like traumas, a lot of healing that she had to face. Pero ahí it kept coming, and I kept, after that, I couldn't anymore. And I was like, listen, I know this might sound a little crazy, but you have a doctor, bro. I broke it down, what this doctor would do, what was his fee, like everything. And that right there, I remember ending the misa and calling my godfather the next day and be like, Padrino, I gotta be tripping. Me dijo, mi hija, that you just said. He's like, my hija, there's no limit to spirits. Like, people have this idea that it's only Congos, it's only Gitana. That's why I get in my feelings when you ask a person, what does your Gitana look like? Everybody says it's yellow and it has to do with Ochun. So there's no other Gitana in the world, that is dressed differently, that are, I've seen Gitanas that are warriors, literally warriors. They son guerreras. They fight. They're armed. They have guns and knives. And when I tell people be looking at me like, is this girl for real?
The Marianeros. Yeah, the pirates and the
all that. And they don't. You tell this to people and they're like, no, I was here waiting for the Congo. And I'm like, no, the Congo is not going to show up. And some people don't understand this. It's not that the Espiritista doesn't want to tell you or the Espiritita's not seeing it. There are spirits that want you to only focus on them for a certain amount of time because maybe there's healing that you have to do. There's things that you have to do with this particular spirit that's going to guide you, that's going to walk you. And then later on, other spirits will show up. And it's normal. It doesn't mean that the Espiritista ripped you off. The Espiritista doesn't know what they're doing. I am one that I try to focus on. That whole thing of giving people 20 different spirits in one misa, if they show up, blessings. Never has happened to me. Why? Because my energy is focused on other things. And when you are truly connected, these type of misa, especially misa de investigaciones, you're not going to show up. They're not going to show up 4,000 spirits coming through. Because a lot of the times it's people with traumas. It's people with things that they haven't freaking healed yet. And that one particular spirit is going to be like, when you're done healing everything you got to heal, then we'll make more presents. And it's fine.
You're making an amazing point you don't hear often anymore. And I remember from the old days, we had classes of spirits to know what their job was in your cuadro espiritual. And so you may have the lavador, the one that works, that's your connection to the outside world of doing the labor on behalf of the world spiritually. But then the other muertos might have been just for you. You might have a healer that's for your health spiritually. So when you're feeling off, they may tell you to get some hierbas and clean yourself at home and put a little something. You may take that same herb, let it dry out, and then you burn it later. So you dissipated what you cleaned yourself with and turned it into a whole different other element that needs to be to clean, right? And leaving things in front of the muerto, leaving baños that you clean yourself with. But the gitana, the little baño here, boop, that's for you. Take that off of me while I go out in the world or whatever, right? And so these ideas started to change when people just started they told you the spirits they saw, but we stopped examining and investigating what their jobs were. So by the time you did and don't get me started on the coronación because I have my issues with it, but I'm gonna leave that alone for now. That's probably another go live. But the idea of just understanding by that time you did a coronation, you knew who the main guide was because there wasn't just three misas. This idea of I gotta do three misas before that better be your ninth, 12th misa you've had to align
Luz.
your shit. Excuse me, to align yourself and get it together so that you're clear with who you're walking with before you put a whole new set of things in your life to learn. You got to know the basics of who's walking with you. You should be able to call upon them by name. You should be able to call them to you when you need to call them. Send them out if you need to. I need you to prepare my way and make sure I'm good on the way home. I'm blah, 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 blah. Say your prayers, say your things. One of the things I like to do, I don't know if you've been taught this, I will tell them when you hear this prayer, that's for you to come. There's certain prayers I'm going to say in a misa, whatever, because I'm calling my spirit. You see me break out into a 23rd Psalm in the middle of a thing, and I'm like, I'm calling my spirit because I want information, more clarity on something that may be coming to me that may be sensitive. And I'm like, I don't want to say this. So my job is not to impress anyone here as an espiritista. My job is to make sure that, again, the tenets of faith, hope, and charity are being the forefront of what I'm saying. I'm not here to impress you because I know something I shouldn't know. I'm here to make sure you understand, A, you have a spirit guide that's communicating to me. So that means you have somebody on your team who cares about you enough that wants to tell me, a stranger, something so you can believe more. So
Yep.
you can walk in faith a little bit more. So we can examine why you're still hanging on to this hurt or why you're still allowing things in your life that you know aren't good for you. And these spirits are sitting here trying to help you. So now we have to examine those things. Let's have real conversation, but let's be tactful. Let's know the time and place. Some things I've had to say, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more after the misa because there's some things that came up I do not want to say in front of everybody. Right?
Yep.
So it's a case by case basis, but we're not there to serve ego. One of the prayers we say that if ego is the forefront of it, take my gifts away, because it's no longer about what it's for.
And a lot of people, I had one young lady that came to my house when I first moved here to Tampa, and those were her words. She mentioned to me, she's like, I never thought a misa was about this because she came with a lot of trauma. She came with a lot of work that she had to do. And the entire misa was this one ancestor showing her how she was living and how wrong she was and how she had to heal. And she cried the entire misa. And when I remember when she left my house and she texted me, she was like, thank you, because I didn't know this was part of Espiritismo. And I tell people, this is what Espiritismo is. Espiritismo is not to put your spirits to work. Espiritismo is not. There's some of us who are destined to work Espiritismo in the sense that, like you mentioned, you're going to have a spirit that's going to be in charge of cleansing people, and you're that portal, right? But there's other people that don't have this, and they're joining this practice for one thing only, and it's to heal, because their spirits want them to heal so they can become better people. And that's something that a lot of people don't want to hear. You know, a lot of people, and I share this, I share personal stuff in my classes. And because for me, it was very hard. When I first joined to Espiritismo, I was a baby. Um, I didn't grow up with my biological father. I didn't know who my biological father was. And the first spirit that came to presence was his mother, who died the same day that I was born. And that to me was, I always questioned that. I always was like, how can somebody who I don't know, who abandoned me as a child, why is their mother making presents? Like, why would this lady want to be part of anything associated with me? And it took me years to understand that that is what Espiritismo is, because my grandmother was coming to me to heal me from certain things that her son did in this life. And that's what people
He
are
was with
not
you. He
understanding.
wasn't, but she was with you. And she
Exactly.
said, I come representing this side of the family. I come to show you what he couldn't do. I'm here in the spirit realm doing. And you know, it's so funny you say that, because that's been one of the things I've noticed have come a lot, that I had to tell people in their mourning stages when they do a misa for somebody who passed, and we're doing maybe 9-day misas or whatever. Sometimes the spirit is other spirits are present, if not the spirit that recently deceased. In which case, some messages really hit home, and I said, you know, there's certain things they had to release in this physical realm that they have to now heal and learn on their end, so that they can start doing the stuff, the generational curses within the family.
Yep.
And there's stuff in the spiritual realm that they're going to be able to do now once they get past whatever. That's why we're lifting them in light for these 9 days and beyond, because there's stuff that they have to do now in that realm, in that space. And so we keep their name, we keep them lit, we keep them elevated in order to get to where they have to go, to help and call upon them as needed to do what needs to be done. And people forget about that. They forget about the idea of facing yourself, facing your traumas. I give evidencias, and as I'm giving them, here goes my muerta. Oh, you heard what you told them? Are you gonna apply that too? Right? Because she's sitting in my, and that's why I said I don't know these espirititas that don't have their muertos checking them, because my muertos check me before anybody can even come and say something. They're telling me off. They're like, oh, that was a nice evidencia. Are you going to apply that to your life? Because what you're telling them, you needed to hear. And I'll notice in a lot of misas, there's a theme. There's a theme of healing. There's a theme of accountability. There's a theme of going back to basics. Because a lot of times, once you start putting too many hats on, you start getting like these people. More is more. Let's go back to basics. What happened to the witchy person you were before this all started? When this was in the beginning, it was you in a glass of water and doing a little obrita of this, a little cinnamon here, a little this, whatever. We forgot about that because we got over conflated. Yep. Everything we saw, it has to be big, and it doesn't. And a lot of the muertos have been consistent with that. Go back to basics. You're making this complicated. Not every spirit needs a doll and a pot, because they don't need to be anchored to this plane. They need to do the stuff here, not here. We have to learn those things. We have to start teaching those things again, and we have to be honest with conversations. That's why I'm glad someone like you does classes. My friend Andres, that I do readings, that I do misas with, he does classes. Let's talk about this, because if you're not doing actual healing work, you're not listening to spirit.
No, and that's I think it's one of the biggest. I think that's one of the biggest issues that our practices are facing now. That's why a lot of people that I see on this app claiming to be espiritistas, I know that is bullshit. And it's not because I know it all, and it's not because I could read people's mind. It's because of their behaviors. Because Egun is not going to allow you, because there are times, I'm going to put the perfect example. The last crowning that I did, I said I need to tap out, because I was doing misas left and right every weekend, and I tapped out. And I took September was my month that I'm like, I'm not doing anything. Get in your feelings, get upset. And I tell people all the time, respectfully, if I am not okay, I can't help you. Because that makes no sense. It's like for us who crown and for us who work ochas, If we are not clean, if we are not, in a good mind, how are we putting how are we working these religions or these practices with that mind? And I took my whole month off and now I'm back on it. I'm doing back the misas. I start this weekend, but people are not taking times for themselves. It is okay for us to say F everything because I've done it 1,000 times. Especially this year test me in ways that I can't even mention. And I'm like, no, there's no way that you could be spiritual. There's no way that you could really be helping other people if you are not okay. Something is not adding up. Either you're bullshitting people or you're harming people because you are also not healed. And that is a big problem because if something triggers me, like for example, I have a lot of people that I've done misas to, especially young women, even young men that have issues with their parents because they didn't grow up. If I am not completely healed from that trauma that my biological father left me, how am I able to help somebody else? Because now I'm going to sit, like you mentioned, it's going to trigger me. And my muertos are going to say the same thing that you just mentioned. Well, how are you telling this person this advice, but you're not healing from it? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. And this is why I tell people sometimes we got to use common sense. Because how can I help David and tell David, oh, David, heal from this and this and that, but I'm a shitty person? Make that shit make sense. It doesn't make any sense at all.
It's all of that. And that's why I said this is medicine. Spirituality is medicine. The different roads of spirituality all exist, the different forms of it. That's why I respect everybody's anything. I can show up in any room and be like, you let me know what you need me to do. I'm in Rome. I will do as the Romans. What do I got to do? Unless it's something unethical for me, and I'll just opt out. And that's in my own tradition. I have went to places and I say, here is my sobre. Thank you so much for everything. I'm leaving. Why are you leaving? Because I don't agree with what's happening here. And I'm making it known because I'm not going to do this, no fifi o kang, and I'm not going to write nothing, no book as a witness to something I don't agree with. And it's not worth an envelope. You think I want to be here at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning to work for 6 hours? I could be at home with my feet up in my bata, chilling. Like, what are you giving? You know what I'm saying? But it's also, those points of, we see it now, and I don't know how much of it was being given back in the day. I know it's been something more and more. I've been having come out in misas with what self-love looks like, self-value, self-respect. And I tell people, with my god kids and my friends, I said, listen, if I invite you over to do something and that day you wake up and you're not feeling it, I'd rather you not come. I'd rather you come when you have the energy because I want to be there, not because you feel obligated. Because how you show up with your energy makes a difference, right? So I try to give people that space. You're human. I'm giving you grace and space to be such. Things will always happen. People will always cancel things. I'd rather you cancel and take the time you need for yourself than show up overworked, tired, exhausted, not wanting to be there.
Yeah.
It's going to come off differently. So definitely listen to this elder because she's saying it. Take care of yourself. Check in with yourself. Check in with yourself. That's part of your health upkeep is part of your spiritual upkeep.
And I've had people, trust me, I've had people get mad at me. I've had people, even on this app, they reach out for whatever a question, and I take longer than what they expected, and they block me. Do whatever makes you happy. Do what makes you happy. But I always tell this, my space, and I learned this, David, from correction. I did corrections for a while, and I learned this from that because you get drained into that. It's a negative environment. At the end of the day, you're working in a prison. And you work 12 hours, and nonstop, and I learned that because I used to get drained. So I apply that to my spirituality. If I'm not feeling it, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. When it comes to any initiation, from something simple, from like giving a local to a cariocha, we gotta smile. We gotta come positive. It's our energy is everything. Whether it is in misas, that's why I will cut you off. I've been doing this is going to be my third open misa next month because I'm not doing one in October because I have a crazy October. You coming to my house negative, respectfully, I don't want you here because I'm opening my doors to the community to learn, to elevate their spirits, to give light to their spirits. We don't need your negative vibe. If you don't pick up on that, then I do. So you're not welcome. Very simple. And we all have our days. God knows, I'm a whole, I can be bitter and upset. And I'm one of those. But you got to learn when to tell yourself, this is not the moment. I'm going to walk away or I'm not doing it. And I really think that that's something that a lot of us don't do, is that we don't take time for ourselves because we're so caught up. And there's a lot of people that don't care either, whether they're godchildren, whether they're not godchildren. And that hurts me to see that there's people like that, especially if it's a godchild, because there is people that don't really care. They don't care. All they care is, well, what is David going to do for me? I don't care how he's feeling. I don't care if he's down. I don't care if he's tired. And that shows you as an elder the type of person this person is, you know, how they are as godchildren or how they are as people who are coming to get guidance and assistance and stuff like that. So I'm going to see. Go ahead.
It's a hard job. It's a hard job. A lot of times with my god kids, I will tell them, like, to our point earlier, I have one crowned head. 15 years in, I have one crowned head. I don't have a bunch of crowned heads. I have people marked. I have people that I put them at their bóveda. Because I don't know why you're asking me this question. You try to figure it out first, do the work, and then we'll revisit this in a little bit. Because then if I know that you've exhausted your resources and you've done anything I've taught you and I've sat with you and you've seen me do, because I'm not above anything. I don't ask you to do anything I do not do.
Yep.
Anything. You see me at a spot, let me tell you, my God kids know, I'll be the first one serving the room. Would you like some coffee? Do you need anything while you're here? The elders, would you like a chair to sit down at? And I tell them all, in service is a beautiful thing. Ask everybody what they need, and you're not here to be here partying and stuff like that as well. It is a get together with a tambor or whatever. You better check on all these elders, make sure they got their coffee, the drummers, they got their water. Do you need anything? Can I help you? It creates an environment, and we have to start remembering that environment of respect, of care, of self-care, checking in. I see my friends running around. Mommy, you're the Gibona. I need you over there. What do you need me to do? I'll go get that for you. We're community. We're supposed to be supporting and helping each other. That's how this is going to survive, and that's how this is going to work. There's ritual knowledge, but there's general base rules of knowledge and understanding with one another. And we have to start implementing that back. We have to draw boundaries and say, baby, I don't have it today. I don't have it to have this conversation with you. I understand you had the dream. I understand you have the feeling. Go light a candle. Go sit at your bóveda. Talk to your muertos and ask them to make some clarity. See what comes. Think about this from
Yep.
multiple aspects. In fact, go do a thing for Santa Clara and ask for claridad. Because I don't understand why that wasn't done. But you get what I'm saying? It's like we have to sometimes give back to people to figure things out, because I do not like to nurture codependency. I'm teaching you how to be connecting to your own things for your benefit, for you. I don't want you having to come here all the time. I got my own muertos, you got your own. I got my Orisha. Now, if you're my God, can you come and speak my Orisha? That's a different story. But muerto-wise, you have your own. And so I want you to start learning how to depend on that and how to connect on that.
I'm gonna ask two questions because there's a lot of questions that my godchildren wrote here, but I know it's pretty late. But I want your opinion on these two questions. The first one that they asked was, is it possible to have the gift of mediumship without being initiated or crowned?
Absolutely. There's plenty of crown people that are not espiritistas. There are plenty of crown people who do not even believe in misas and do not do anything misa related. They'll do everything Egum related, because that is what Lukumi really entails prior to spiritism being present. So I hold a space for all of that. I'm not going to try to police how people need to view things in practice. I think misas are beneficial. I don't think they're mandatory. So I think it's great to have a level of discernment, how to work with spirit, so you know how to identify spirit and what's happening. You can know the difference between ocha getting close and or muerto getting close. They're two different types of energies. But if you're not spending the time to discern that and or walking into a space and feeling something like that's not mine. What's that? That's discernment. You learn that. So I think Espiritismo is beneficial. I think misas are beneficial. They're not mandatory. But mediumship, anybody can tap into some level of it. Some are more open than others. Some have different gifts. Some people get the gifts of writing. People get the gifts of seeing, the gifts of mounting. No gift is greater than the other. I do not really mount muerto like that. My evidencias are what you. I'm gonna sit there, look real cute like this, hand underneath the tetas, like my viejas used to do back in the day. Ask my little coffee, and we're gonna talk about life, and we're gonna talk about what's happening, right? So everything is not a show. It's simple. Everyone has gifts of the spirit, and you have to learn how to nurture those things. That's it.
I agree. I agree. Let me see another one here. I think you answered this one. Do you need to represent every spirit guide? Do you need to represent every spirit guide? Or do you think it's necessary to represent every spirit guide?
When a spirit guide is asking for representation, it could be two different things. It could, or a few different things, but I would say mostly it's for your visual. It's for your connection. So sometimes we're very visual people. If we see it, we can envision it better. We can hold the space energetically, and mind and our emotion and everything when we see something. So it may be asking for representation so that you can connect better with it. Eventually, that can go away. I will tell you now, I'm down to 2 dolls because I had a bunch of stuff at one point, and what people stop having a conversation about is some muertos are not yours by birthright. They come for a reason and a season, and they leave. And so you have to know what the job of that muerto was, what the time period is. Sometimes they'll be gone. You'll never see them again. They came at a specific time in your life for a specific moment, a specific lesson, and they go about their elevation, and you hopefully learn what you need to so they don't have to come back or another spirit in its place. But not everything needs that. If a spirit's asking for an anchor, for something to be a vessel for it, be it a doll, a clay pot, whatever it is, then more than likely that is a lavador. That is a spirit of labor that is specifically with you to transfer between the unseen world into this material world to do specific work like readings or cleanings or whatever the case may be. But that has to be determined and investigated. I wouldn't rush to make anything for anybody.
Let me ask you, David, now that you were mentioning that and your book, one of the books that you have about the Bóveda, what's your opinion? Because I've seen a bunch of, and I don't see it as much in the American community, but more like in the Latin community that they speak a lot about this. What's your opinion on, and there's different terms of, there's some people will call it consecrating the Bóveda, other people will call it activating the Bóveda. Do you really think, in your opinion, that, for example, I'm a new beginner, I got on TikTok and I love this whole spirituality. Do you think that a misa is required to put up a Bóveda? And if so, does an espiritista have to activate or consecrate or, put your Bóveda for you? What is your opinion on that?
I don't believe you have to activate anything. What we do is we will ritually, and rituals look different for everybody. They're not ceremonies. Ritually clean a space. For you, it may be Florida water. For me, it may be holy water. Some people may use ocean water. It may be something that you have to, there's an intent to create a space in your home. That could be chloro. You can take some Clorox and be like, this space is nice and clean now. This is where I'm going to set my cup. And it's about understanding how to create a sacred space. And the thing that doesn't really get discussed a lot either is understanding that space reflects you. That you filling that glass of water is you asking to be filled. You emptying it out is you leaving your burdens behind and getting rid of what you need to. That's why we clean and we pass on to the water. Come and grab anything off my aura that I do not need here, so you can carry it because I don't want to carry it. But when I'm filling this glass, I'm asking to be filled with God's Holy Spirit. I'm asking to be filled with the fluido of lo muerto, of the spirits that guide and protect me, so that I'm in one accord, right? I'm keeping my glass clear because I'm maintaining my clarity that I want. I'm committing to myself as a boveda and my spiritual discernment and my development as much as I would at a gym, right? And going to the gym and create, it's an activity for you to do that. Just like you clean down the machine before you use it, you're going to clean down the space before you use it. It's the
Yep.
same thing, but it doesn't have to be activated. There are people who feel that because they're spiritually inclined and have been practicing more, that they have maybe more ability to do that thing, but your muerto should be activated. The most someone can do as an espiritista is maybe give you some insight and clarity about the spirit you have, or maybe how to work it through their lens, because our spirits don't all work alike. So I can tell you for me, what I would do is I would maybe do this, and that, because that's how I did with mine, and that's what I see with these spirits. Commonly, you may be using something like this. Why don't you try that and see? It's a trial by error.
Yep.
Because as you
Cada
develop
congo con
and
su
learn,
maña, como dicen en el palo.
that's it. So it's a trial by error. I don't believe in activating anything. Some people, like I said, do a lifting before they put something mounted on their table. That's style. That's it. I believe spirit will also guide the process. So if you're learning from someone, their spirit may say this person would benefit if they did it like this.
Luz.
It's not a that's the way everyone has to do it. It's for you. You may have some spirits that are a little bit on the lower end vibrationally, so we're gonna lift, and we're gonna, before we give them a spot on this table, to communicate and to start having any work to do, if at all. Because like you said, it's not always for work; it's for communication. But as time goes by, they may do work for you. They may do a little obra here, a little obra there, whatever. But that comes later. It starts with communing, creating space.
I agree. I agree on everything that you mentioned. And I tell people the same thing. That's why I'm very like, a lot of people send me videos of people setting up the Woveda and putting this stuff on this platform on Instagram. And I tell people, there is no, we have like the basic when it comes to setting up the Woveda. But the extra stuff, the whole cigar, the whole thing is literally what you're saying. It's their own guides. It doesn't mean that that is flat out the rule. Well, now everybody has to smoke a cigar. I remember one of the first misas that I did with one of my goddaughters. She came from a home where she received dolocum, and that particular person taught her that everybody in misas has to smoke cigars. I'm like, where the hell does this person get that? There's people don't. And then I noticed I was laughing because we were in the misa and she was choking on the goddamn cigar. And when we finished the misa, she tells me, Marina, I just don't know how you smoke so easily. And I'm like, well, because I've been smoking for years. I love cigar. Like outside of spiritual things, I smoke cigars. So I am a smoker of cigars. So she goes, bueno, I thought that was like required or mandatory. And I was like, niña, pero since when? You don't have to. And that David just mentioned is very important, and I want people to understand. It's a beautiful thing if you want your elders to be there to guide you, to help you, if you have elders, right? To go with you and help you set it up and stuff like that. It's a beautiful thing. I don't think it's a requirement. I don't think it's mandatory. And I also agree with what he's saying in the sense of everybody does things differently. So maybe he will tell you, hey, light up an incense and clean the place. But literally what he said, maybe your intuition is telling you to get water and salt water and just cleanse it with salt. It all depends on your intuition and what really connects you, And obviously, if you choose to do it with your elder, their intuition and their guidance, because like David said, if they have more knowledge, maybe their spirits, or they're more developed, their spirits are going to be like, okay, this person is going to benefit from this, right? So I think that it's not a requirement. I don't think it's mandatory. If you have someone that could guide you, great. But I believe that you could do it on your own. Absolutely. What's your opinion on I know back in the day, people would do misas prior to even setting anything up, right? Or even having, like what you mentioned, sitting down with an elder and just chit chatting, which that turned ended up turning into a whole misa, and
Yeah,
the
because
elder is
that goes a
pretty
long
much
way.
reading you. What do you think on people who are not doing that and are just going straight to, I'm going to set this up and it is what it is?
I think it's again, I'm gonna say till I'm blue in the face, all of these practices are communal. So while spirituality can be very personal and is very personal, there's still a community to be involved in, and we bounce ideas off of each other, and you'll see consistency, and you will only witness that by experiencing other people. So this idea that I learned from spirit, if that's the case, then that means you would have to be fully able to discern who you are talking to completely. And so when people have these dreams and they say, I spoke to Oshun, I had someone tell me, they said, I was standing, listen to this, I was standing by the piers and I heard Oshun. And I said, okay. And they were like, and I think she's trying to reach out to me. And I said, you were standing by the ocean and you probably heard ocean. I said, because Oshun is not by the ocean. I said, well, what if the spirit was telling you ocean and you heard Oshun? And she was like, I never thought of that. I'm like, I know. But that's the point, is that people because these things are out everywhere. They have so much access to these names. The Yoruba religion right now is the most popular religion right now. The most popular ATR in the world is between Lukumi and Isheshe, and it is being blasted everywhere. So there's all these folks that are like, I'm getting downloads on the astral plane. Okay, so you're telling me in your downloads of astral planes that you haven't encountered spirits that can show up as however that they want to? Because that's the whole person. We have spirits that will answer to anything, which is why I tell people, be careful just setting up altars, and so you know what you're dealing with and working with. Now, above that, because you're not doing anything but praying and asking for the blessings of God, your guides and your protectors, guardian angels, ancestors. What am I going to do for you? I can't activate your spirit guides. I can't activate your bloodline. It's there. So starting early, that's why I said what I'll do sometimes with my god kids is I'll ask them, or someone I'm guiding, I'm like, let me get a picture. I want to see a picture how you set everything up. Maybe we should move all this stuff off the table. There's too much clutter
I like
around
that.
here, right? So I'll do that, but I'm not here to police your connection. I'm here to help you establish it. I don't have to be present to do that as far as at your house. Now, times where we have misas, I do believe it's beneficial to have misa in your own space, in your own home, if it permits. I know some people have family they live with that aren't cool with it. So if we have to rent a space, or maybe I have to use my space, then it becomes a different thing. But it's always going to be better to bless your home and raise the energy in your home that your altar sits at, that you are dedicating your time and energy to. So we're lending to that.
I do the same thing. I always tell people, if you could do it in your house, it's better. If you could do it in your house, it's better. Don't if you can, for literally what David just mentioned, it's understandable. We got to make it work how it is. And a lot of the misas I do, people will travel and come here to my house, but I tell, like, when it's like here in Florida, I'll travel. Like, if you could do it in your house, and people, because of that, people don't understand that's where the energy is. And not only that, it makes more, I don't know if it's, I wouldn't call it like disrespectful, but I feel like if you can do it at home, they're gonna feel like more respected, if that makes any sense. Maybe I'm wording it wrong.
That's the
But
space they're operating in.
yes,
You have
if
your
they feel,
broom at the door. You're doing this in the house. You're spraying this. You're dusting the corners. You're burning this. This is the space they're learning to connect with you. It's where their altar is. It's where you reside. They're gonna know it more than the new place. Now, can they follow you? Does your cuadro espiritual not stay at home? Of course, right? But it's something about, it's further blessing the space. It's further allowing, and misas don't have to be 17 people. You can have two people and you. You can have two people, you and one other person, if you feel comfortable having another person there. But it's not an event. when you're doing a misa, it's for a reason. It's to maybe raise energy in the home and bless the home. It's maybe to investigate. It's maybe a general misa because there's some discord or something happening either with work, in family, whatever it is, and you want to have clarity. You're inviting people to invite your spirits to talk, their spirits to talk, to come to an understanding of what can be done to further help whatever the situations are. And we tend to treat them like shows, like carnival shows, and having, but it's not a big event. It doesn't have to be that. And if you can't afford it, if you can't do it, there's sometimes people can bring a little bit of something. I bring a bag of perfumes and stuff with me anyway. I have stuff I'm like, don't worry about it if you can't get that. Can you get a fishbowl from the 99-cent store? If you don't have a white tablecloth, put a white towel, girl. It's not that simple. Like we come from very humble people who did not have a lot, at least how I always saw it. I'll be very honest with you. The viejas that I started with, they wore their regular clothes. Nobody was dressing in white and doing all this and that. Don't get me wrong. They had batas on. They had the iridescent toenail polish with the toes sticking out the front, little mules. Like this is what I grew up with. The house smelled like sofrito, salmiero, and some coffee. Like it was very simple home environment and community. You knew you were with family, even if you didn't know these people. You recognize these tias. You recognize these women, right? And always women. I always had very strong women that I love. But yes, it doesn't have to be that. It has to be a level of safe space and community. So doing it in your home is always more beneficial than having to do it elsewhere, if you can do it.
I agree. I know somebody mentioned there, can a person, let me see the question. It says, does it matter if you could get a misa de investigación with a santero versus a 21 division person? So in my opinion, I'm going to say my opinion, then I'm going to let David answer this. Misas are done with espiritistas. So it doesn't really matter if the person is, aside from an espiritista, if the person is a practitioner of Santeria or if the person is a practitioner of the 21 divisions. So to me, it doesn't, their other practices doesn't really matter. There's tatas, there's yayas that they do misas, and they're, you know, it's just, if that's what they do, that's what they do. It doesn't really matter.
I agree if they are keeping it to a level of espiritismo that's not directed and connected to a system of practice, that is something. So if you're a 21 divisionist, we're not doing this for Beli Belkan, we're not doing this for Metreseli, we're not doing this for Candelo. Now, this is where that person happens to have a spirit that's in alignment with one of those, they may make their presence known, and that's the reason why. But there's 21 division misas people do that are geared toward the 21 division spirits. There's a table set up for that. So I think there has to be clarity on what it is we're doing. What is the purpose of the misa? Are we clear on what's happening here? Is this for my investigation for my spirits, or is this to figure out how the Lua are helping me in this? Because if that's the case, then we have to figure out what we want to do. And I believe in transparency. If I'm running a misa, I tell you everything. This is how I operate. I run them in English. I'm not doing more than 3 hours, because that's too much information that you have to process and all this you got to do. We're going to sit there for 2 to 3 hours. We're going to do prayer. We're going to keep it simple and clean, calm. Unless the spirit comes down, it has to work. And spirit should be coming down to work and to talk and not to drink a bunch of liquor out of a jicara. They better come to do something and say something, or else you can go right back to where you came from. And those who know me, when I run misas, I will dump a palangana on your head. Don't play with me. We don't do the nonsense. So it's understanding what the purpose is there for, but it shouldn't matter as long as they're a spiritist and a medium, and that's what they're there to do, to commune with your spirit guides and create that environment. It shouldn't matter where they come from.
Yeah, I agree. I agree on everything what he mentioned. I do agree. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna jump off. Again, if you guys want to support David, his books are now available. Make sure you guys follow him. Make sure you guys get all the information. If there's any questions that were not answered here based, from his books, reach out to him. David, do you have, outside of TikTok, do you have any other platforms that they could follow you or find you at?
I use Facebook. It's David A. Sosa. I believe the email we established for the books is Cowrie Halls. So COWRYHALLS at gmail.com. Excuse me. So if people need to ask questions there about the books or anything pricing or what are our specials, I know we're doing a special now because it's pumpkins and it's October. So if that's something you're interested in, just hit us up. We'll tell you what to do and we'll make it work for you either way. But we're looking forward to just educating and sharing with the people. That's really the goal here.
That's awesome, awesome, awesome. I enjoyed it. I definitely want to. I have a lot of good questions. My godchildren be killing me with these questions, but I have a lot of really good questions that I would love to do another live and talk. I have another priest that I want her to enjoy, to join me in a live, and I think then maybe if we do like a live with multiple people and everybody sharing their opinions, because I love to listen to this, and I love to hear everybody's point of view. But I do want to thank you, David. I do want to thank you because I know you are a busy person. I know you have a life outside of spirituality. You work full time, and I know you have things going on. I didn't know that you were a singer or a songwriter. That part, that when you mentioned it, kind of like I was like, wait a minute now. And then I saw the comments that people were saying, like, oh, he could sing. I was like, so now I got to go back to my drawing board and look you up and listen to you. Um, I know my husband speaks very well of you, so that's why I was like I gotta put him on my live and support what he's doing because I think that the especially the prayer book, a lot of people can benefit from that, um, and being able to connect, and being able to not feel left out, especially right now with this whole TikTok has a thing that I've never in my life seen the things that I've seen on TikTok when it comes to religion. Um, they make topics that shouldn't even be topics, to be honest. But I love what you're doing because this whole new topic going around on Lukumi is racist, Lukumi discriminates, and all these things that they're talking down on Lukumi as if no one else is doing it, only Lukumi. I love what you're doing because I want people to understand that there is people like David, like myself, like my husband, that our main goal is to heal. Our main goal is to unite as one another. There's already so much hate in this world. There's already so much that we have to face as Black Americans, as Latinos, as me, as I'm a whole immigrant, right? Because I wasn't born in this country. We have so much things that we have to face to also come into a religion and have to face it. So I love what he's doing because this helps Latinos who don't speak Spanish, Blacks who don't speak Spanish to feel like, okay, I can be part of this because when I'm doing Padre Nuestro que estás en los cielos, oh, okay, wait a minute, I could follow what Senia is saying, and I understand what Senia is saying, and I think it's a beautiful thing what he's doing because more people need to see this on this app. This hate that we have with one another when it comes to race, it really breaks me because I've never seen that in my Ile. I've never seen it in my personal Ile with my godparents. So when I hear these stories, not saying that is a lie, not saying that is bullshit, but it just hurts me. It hurts me to see that there is people experiencing these things.
I invite people to have those conversations. I know that they're tough. I know that they seem pointed. They're necessary. They're necessary for us, especially now this political climate where there's a lot of division. Purposefully, a lot of things are coming up for a lot of people. So we have to make sure we're listening to people. And if we start getting defensive right away, that is an opportunity to check yourself as to why you are getting defensive and actually listen. Do this. We always tell Yabos to do it. We should do it too. This, and this. Watch what people are saying. Listen to where they're coming from. You may not have their experience. That doesn't make it right or wrong. But how do we hold a space those who can. That's what we're trying to do here. That's what Senia's doing. That's what her husband does. That's what we're trying to do here. We are trying to hold spaces, to teach, to encourage people to live better lives, to connect to spirituality. That's why, I think from the moment I saw a lot of your lives and I saw you confronting a lot of issues, a lot of people and things, I was like, I like her because we need people that aren't afraid to do it. And we also have people, you've always been someone that I've seen who'll be like, you know what? Yeah, maybe I could have done better. Or maybe I didn't need to say that. Right? We allow the accountability factor, the grace for ourselves to heal, that maybe we didn't get it right the first time. How can we do it better the next? Because we can't erase the past. We can only worry about the present and how we're moving forward. So I thank you and Baba for really putting that as the forefront of your platform. That it's very clear that you're passionate about the religion, you love it, you respect it, the traditions that are here, and you want to preserve it. And that is the thing we're going to need more of, unfortunately.
Yeah, we definitely need a lot, and that's what I want people to understand. I don't want people to, and I'm a person that I don't, I thank my mother every day, because the way she raised me, wrong is wrong. It doesn't matter if you're brown, white, yellow, purple, black. It wrong is wrong, and that's what I'm seeing in a lot of people. That's why I say, are we really doing it to spread awareness, or are we part of the problem as well? Because if we're gonna speak on this problem, then we need to speak on the rest of the other problems. We just can't say, well, these people, this race is doing this, but because I'm part of this race, I'm not going to talk about this. Oh no, me, I don't care about that, and in my platform, that's what I don't want people. And that last, video that I did about the whole young lady that did the video, I had conversations with a lot of people who were very open-minded. A lot of people told me, well, X, maybe like this, like this. And I'm like, okay, I kind of figure, I kind of see that point of view. But then when we have this defensive mentality, when we have this closed mind mentality, what we're not realizing is that we are part of the problem if we keep it like that. Because if we saying, okay, we're going to talk about this, but we're refusing to talk about this, are we really spreading awareness, or are we just picking sides? And
Platform thing. It's a platform thing, it's a time and a place thing, and it's a subject matter thing. If you were gonna tell me, if you came to me, you said, David, I experienced a lot of misogyny within this thing, and this is what I went through, this is what I saw. I can't sit there and be like, well, not everybody. Why is my response that? That's a problem right there. My response is to defend all this instead of saying, I'm so sorry you went through that. Let me see what I can do better on my end in my house. It only can control me and mine. I can control the people I affiliate with. I can only use the platform to say, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. Hey, that's not right. Don't talk to people like that. Hey, that's a woman. We respect women in this tradition. Actually, the women are the founders of this tradition and the holders of a secret. Like, we have to have those platforms in those situations. And that's what I feel a lot of people don't see happening. It becomes the whole BLM. It's like, oh, all lives matter. Wait, wait, wait. That's not the conversation. There's a reason why this conversation is being had. Let's stick to this subject now. And then we can go, but we have to tackle one thing at a time. And there's so much nuances, and we'll be here forever for that. But I really thank you for your time.
thank you, thank you. I am definitely going to buy your book because I'm going to share with my godchildren. But thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I definitely think we should, I'm going to put a couple people together. I know Danny was on the live, and I really want him on the live. He's been on a few of my lives. But I want to talk these questions because a lot of these questions that my godchildren sent me are really good questions on Espiritismo. And even though we have this conversation and with this discussion privately, like in our own, private moments, I think it's good for other people to hear, and other people with experience to also share their point of view and their thoughts. So again, if you haven't followed, if you don't follow David. Y'all support him because I'm definitely going to buy the book because I want to read it. I hope and want many, many blessings for you.
Likewise.
May Obatala always bless you, and may Yalode always continue to keep you in this bubbly energy that you have, because you have a very, very unique energy. And I love it. I love the way you are very professional, the way you answer to a lot of people. I'm just gonna stick to that. You're very professional. Um, and a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people ask me sometimes, like, X, you're so calm sometimes. And I'm like, well, first, I know the laws. I can't be out here just cursing people out. And two, the moment you let other people's behavior take over you, they won already. So that's why, call me what you want, but I'm a very calm person. I was very, very aggressive for many years, and shout out to Obatala and Ochun for calming me down. So you're never gonna catch me unless you really trigger me. You're not gonna really catch me out of character. But I do have my moments, because I am Crown Obatala, so I do have my moments. But that's one thing that I love about your videos, David. You're very calm. You're very respectful, because a lot of people on this app, they claim one thing, but they're not, especially when they are going to point out certain things, or when they're going to do videos. Like, their ego, literally, they could be talking everything they talking, but their ego, literally, you could tell, like, I know you're BSing me, because your demeanor is telling me the complete opposite. And I worked in a prison for many years. They teach us, they train us to smell the demeanor without even having to say anything. So there's certain things people can't really BS in me on that. But I do love what you do. I know you spread awareness a lot on your page as well. And I know you try to teach as much as you can. Even those who are close-minded, you still try to keep it very professional and very respectful. So you have my respect for that. And I said it in the beginning, you're not you don't link up, you don't join cliques. And that's something that is really big on TikTok. Everybody wants to click up with, I don't know why, but I love that. You stand on your own. You stand on what you're saying. You love these religions as much as a lot of us do. And that right there just deserves my respect. So many, many blessings to you. Thank you for joining. For anybody asking, I do save these lives and I do share them on my YouTube videos. So if you guys missed it, you guys could always go on there. I probably do it either tomorrow or on Sunday, okay? So
YouTube the same as this handle? Because I'll subscribe there too. I didn't know that you had a YouTube. I'll definitely check it.
Yeah, it's the same thing, okay? So bendiciones, and thank you, David. Gracias, bendiciones, everybody.